Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the WCS EU Challenger Finals. My name is Fear Dragon, and I am now joined by Nathanius at the desk. How's it going, Nate?
It's going great. You know, we just hit breakfast time in California, so just
like an early breakfast, I think.
Yeah, just doing a little bacon and waffles. You know what I'm saying?
I know half of what you're saying. I had the waffles, not the bacon.
Missing out, my dude. But it's been good. And you know what else is good? Terran gameplay. Manipulating the schedule so that I can just commentate all the Terran matches. You know, I channeled dark energy to Hero Marine so that he could win his series just so that I wouldn't have to cast a ZVZ later today.
There you go.
I got nothing to complain about.
And I'm sure that Hero Marine's going to end up defeating Cyril, as everybody expects, Sarcasm, in course, included. And then he'll just make it to the finals and you just get another Terran.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's the dream, and I'm excited to see my Dutch boy in the next series as well.
Yeah, this is going to be a really fun one. uThermal versus, of course, ShoWTimE. Now, there's some interesting stuff going on here. ShoWTimE, I know Jeff and I talked a little bit about this and how he's like a really good player, sometimes a little bit less consistent and sometimes kind of fell off, but he's looking really good right now. And uThermal has been doing the most interesting things lately. He's been going for a lot of these really, really crazy mech builds. He did this actually in the Filthy Cup finals that I got to broadcast with Rotterdam, but like 4 or 5 days ago or something. Or I guess it's been a week now. But he did this versus Neeb, and he went for this mech style in all 3 of the games, and it looked really strong. Neeb is really good, so he still lost, but it was a really, really interesting style to watch.
Well, I won't say no to that. As one of the few Terran players that enjoys a good mech.
Do you mech? Do you mech often?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Actually, was that the post that was on Reddit or whatever about tanks and widow mines? Or was that a different mech?
You're talking to the person who doesn't go to Reddit ever.
Well, I mean, I just assumed that if you were commentating it, if there was like a tank mine thing that was like amazing. But anyway, I love mech versus Protoss. It's terrible in a lot of ways, but very, very fun when you can make it work. Especially when you can get to battle cruisers, but I don't know if I want to get that far ahead of myself.
Yeah, the interesting thing that I feel like is going to also come into play here is that ShoWTimE is the guy who will go for the macro game, even when it plays heavily to his opponent's favor. I feel like a lot of the times, occasionally he'll mix in an all-in or something, some kind of aggression here and there, but ShoWTimE is the player that I think has so much confidence in his macro play that he will allow someone like uThermal to get into that good old groove of a mech style.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if he actually goes for that. There's a lot on the line here. I think that this is, I think that ShoWTimE is a player that is definitely solid enough to handle that, even if it's not quite the same caliber that we would normally say is like a guy like Neeb. But we're gonna find out. We are loading into Blackpink to kick off this series, and in the bottom left position, we have the blue Terran player from the Netherlands. He is uThermal.
And his opponent spawning up in the top right-hand corner of the map, armed with his macro play. It is Arma's ShoWTimE.
Ever since our conversation about player introductions and like intro songs earlier, I've realized that all I want now is to get like an FX put on my voice so that I can just try to do like that super badass GSL intro, you know? They always had like the cool voices before.
Oh yeah. What would be your intro song?
It was like I think the best one that they had was like when they would intro and be like, it's like STXR Bunny. It was like the most like deep gravelly voice. Like they just went out. Like they actually found a living golem, like a stone golem, which was the only thing that could have such a gravelly voice to get that tone out.
I think my favorite part is that the season before that, they got a bunch of K-pop stars who'd be like, it would cut to a video of this K-pop star that slides down a children's slide, walks up to the camera, and is like, Nestea.
Yeah.
It just went from 0 to 1 really quick.
Yeah, that's how we got to get the celebrity presence into StarCraft. As far as TvP on this map goes, it's pretty standard for Protoss to block that Reaper cliff inside of the main base, and it has been blocked, so the Reaper can only run around so much. The ramp into the natural makes it a little bit more difficult to poke with the Reaper initially, and then later makes it difficult to poke with the Stalker since you have that high ground to try and push things back a little bit. But the Reaper expanded a reactor and factory. This is pretty straightforward. There's a lot that you can do with this when you're playing Terran against Protoss. Most often you'll see a couple Widow Mines put out with some Marines. The Marines defend against anything at home. The Mines wait for the starport and they go into a medevac drop. However, we have seen builds, I think we even saw this in GSL last night, you can keep the reactor on the factory and you can get a bunch of Widow Mines and you can go for, you know, just heavy mine drops, which is another great strategy. And you can follow that up with Liberators if you want. But there's a couple of things that you can do with it. You don't really see anything like Cyclones, what have you. But
yeah, the Widow Mine drop stuff especially is actually, I think, thrown a lot of Protoss players for a little bit of a loop because they don't really quite see it coming. They end up losing a lot of, for example, early Oracles and stuff. But it's going to be the Hellions coming out, and it's going to be the Twilight going straight into that Blink play for ShoWTimE. So getting a nice little kind of defensive tool like Blink is always nice in the early stages of the game.
yeah. And it makes a lot of sense. You know, those mine drops are really hard to deal with. So it's 2 Hellions and then 2 Cyclones. And he didn't actually get a starport. So maybe we're talking about the weird mech memes you were discussing earlier. The 2 Hellions and the Reaper kill the Adept, which is a really nice pick-off. The cost of repairing that Hellion to full health is like 25 minerals or something. So this is an easy, that's a really nice win at the start of the game here, especially with the Cyclones coming out, as that Adept is one of the few units that can soak up a good amount of shots from it. But all right, Dear Dragon, enlighten me as to what else you've seen, because I think we can throw stats out the window. We are seeing a very weird game here.
Indeed. So one of the things that actually did get abused by Neeb when he faced off versus uThermal, going for this kind of mech style that seems likely that uThermal's kind of going into. He's getting that fast third base. He's getting up a lot of these Widow Mines and the Cyclones. He actually, and he did that in the last series that he played versus Neeb in the Filthy Cup Finals. He got up a lot of those Cyclones, got up a couple of those Hellbats as well. But the one thing he didn't really have was he didn't have any form of anti-air. And I was really surprised and interested in how Neeb dealt with this style, because he just reactively was like, I'm just going to make 5 Warp Prisms, I'm going to make a bunch of Immortals, and I'm going to drop the Immortals on top of you, because you don't actually have the DPS to take care of the Warp Prisms. It's kind of the old Brood War style Zealot bombing, but with Immortals.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's actually that is a very difficult thing to deal with if you ever try to especially move out on the map with your mech army. It takes a lot of missile turrets to try and cover, and even then, the missile turrets usually won't kill the Warp Prisms before they get to your base. So that makes me wonder how if he's seen this, if he's seen that particular game that we're talking about, and if he likes that style. Cyclones can kind of bully Stalkers. You need to be careful. But the shield regen and the blink, like, you know, the Stalkers that you trade, the Stalkers are cheaper than the Cyclones. So if you can just trade out like one-on-one every time and just poke away at it, those Cyclones are really hard to replace. But 2 Hellions gonna slip by into the main base, get some scouting and maybe some juicy probe shots. There's the recall.
Okay, now he's gonna blink on top of these Hellions, and there's only 2 Hellions, so it's not expected to get too much damage done here, but the scouting information is so invaluable. Really love that uThermal had enough, I guess, foresight to just leave 2 of the Hellions outside of his main base and not just kind of pull them back into the main base, because otherwise then they would have been trapped out by the Blink Stalkers. He never forces that recall. He has maybe a little bit of a harder time securing this third base as he tries to move down the ramp.
Yeah, this game is weird to me because has ShoWTimE identified that this is totally a mech build? Like
he's seen some of the Cyclones, I believe, because he poked forward and picked away at them a little bit. But I don't know if that's going to be enough for him to say, like, yeah, this is full-on mech and what kind of brand of it. But this is a lot of Stalkers to be dealing with. Decent Blink Micro also microing back those weakened Stalkers. Is going to end up losing 1 or 2. There's even a Mule being pulled off the line that gets sniped off. But ShoWTimE sensing some blood in the water.
Yeah, I like this at a ShoWTimE. This is one of the biggest weaknesses of mech. This was a really, really adventurous attempt at taking the third base from uThermal. Stalkers are so good in situations like this where you can just get those fights and those skirmishes. It does end up trading a few more of them out there. It does look
10
like
workers just died for ShoWTimE.
Not bad.
I'm not sure where.
It was... It looks like it was a couple Hellions that ran by. He didn't,
yeah, I guess 2 more Hellions died.
He had a one mine out initially earlier, but that one got killed by the Stalkers, so unless he had a second one that just went through.
Nice snipe off on that Observer. Since he has that Raven, he can shut down some of that vision. And the anti-armor missiles are also pretty important in these fights for uThermal, because you pair anti-armor missiles with Cyclones, and remember, it is reducing the armor of those units, and like Nate and Jeff were talking about earlier, it can go negative, and you pair that with a Cyclone that attacks absurdly fast, and oh man, it adds up really quick.
Yeah, it really helps with the Cyclone against the lighter units as well, like the Stalker, or excuse me, like the Adept and the Zealot, and then has devastating returns against those armored units where the Cyclones are already pretty strong. But right now, we're seeing the composition lean towards something that is really hard for Mech to deal with, which is those charged Zealots, and that Raven takes a couple of shots from the Stalkers. It's going to hold on just okay for now. But charged Zealots are really good against Mech. Thing is, most of the units that you're going to be building out of factories aren't really tremendous against Zealots. Like, Hellions don't really do a lot of damage, especially without Blue Flame, because they attack slow, so their overall DPS is just kind of meh. And you also have to keep in mind that Cyclones are hurt by the armor that Zealots start with, and Siege Tanks just don't do a lot of damage to these light units. So this wave of Zealots is going to come in, and he's just going to blow the doors down on this setup. That Cyclone cannot fight against the Zealots. He needs a huge amount of firepower to deal with this, and ShoWTimE just immediately brought the pressure, and he's just cleaning up. This is really painful to watch. Like,
It's a little bit of a clinic, yeah.
Thermal's getting slapped, and the thing is, it's like, oh, there you go. I got enough money to warp in another wave of Zealots. Well, your one Siege Tank, it's going to actually take forever to kill this, and gives plenty of time for ShoWTimE to bring the rest of his forces over and kill everything.
Yeah, I think the big thing here is that ShoWTimE realized that I can just keep my opponent's unit count really low, because that's a lot of what Mech relies on. It relies on being very strong together, but if you just never get up to that critical mass of units, well then you could just get overpowered by things like Charge Lots and Blink Stalkers. And ShoWTimE just kept finding ways to trade out versus Cyclones. Even if they were kind of even trades, it ends up being very, very difficult to ever climb up to that critical mass. And now there's the Warp Prism, warping on top of the Zealots, and there's one Liberator trying to do some damage. It's just not doing anything. GG.
Well, yeah, that's probably one of the worst parts about the Cyclone openings. Like, when you open Cyclone, you're saying that you want a little bit of that buffer at the start, but what you're really looking for is to have something to deal with a fast Oracle or a Warp Prism, and yeah, you can get the Observer. Cyclone Raven, I like the opening.
Yeah.
But you have to keep the reactored factory. After you get 4 Cyclones, I feel like you have to just get more Widow Mines defensively, because the Widow Mines build really quickly. They're okay versus the Stalkers, depending like where the blinks go and whatnot. But they're really good against the Zealots if they end up building a lot of them. But, I mean, yeah, Blackpink is difficult to take the third on when you're playing Mech versus Protoss, because you have to have a tank to anchor that to stop the Stalkers, but then you also need your other units to deal with Zealots.
Yeah.
ShoWTimE responded really well. Like, if you notice that the unit count is that low and that he invested into like double armory and a bunch of Cyclones, I think getting the extra factories before the armories and getting like 2 tanks and a bunch of Widow Mines is the best way to hold that. But it's that third base area is so wide open on that map. I don't know. I didn't really like it too much, but Neon Violet Square is the next map, and I mean, if the series had started on that map, I would have liked what he was going for a lot better there.
Yeah, it gets a little bit dicey, I think, in that situation. I wonder if uThermal's going to try it again, because this is primarily what I've been seeing from uThermal lately. He hasn't been kind of mixing it up between bio and mech in a lot of the games I've been seeing, and I know that he's fully capable of playing a really strong bio style. In fact, he used to be known for how good his bio style was and how aggressive he was, how scrappy he ended up being as
well. I mean, we got to see the fun facts about him when we did the player introduction. I mean, a lot of people remember that uThermal won that Intel Extreme Master Shanghai off the back of TvP beating Neeb, who at that time was on his rise up. He hadn't won everything that year, of course, but 2016 would be where he would end the year with his miraculous victory at the Kespa Cup. But yeah, that's it. I have not actually seen a whole lot of this out of uThermal. I haven't been able to catch many of his games because I've been busy lately, but this is interesting to see him go for it, because I try to play similar styles myself, and I'm obviously not a pro, but I still die to the same thing. Like that charge, as a Protoss player, if you know that your opponent is going mech, it's always good to go straight into charge, just because in low unit counts, those Zealots trade insanely cost effectively when the mech army is still small.
Yeah, part of me, the Protoss part of me, is happy that ShoWTimE is still being very adaptive and saying, okay, if you're not going to have the units that you need to defend against me with these Blink Stalkers and the charge loss moving forward, I'm going to put the pressure on. Because I was a little afraid ShoWTimE was going to play a bit too defensive, but definitely not showing any of that. He's really willing and ready to kind of get in his opponent's face after taking that first game. Getting ready to move on to Neon Violet Square for game number 2. Nate, take it away.
All right, we are loaded in on Neon Violet Square in the southeast position. We got the red Protoss player charging and slicing and dicing up that mech. He's ShoWTimE.
And his opponents?
Yep.
Spawning up in the top left-hand corner of the map. In that liquid blue, we have uThermal. I feel like uThermal's kind of one of the more emotional players out there. He has strong opinions on things on Twitter and stuff, and well, he's gonna be opening up with a bit of a strong opening.
You don't need to sugarcoat. As a fellow Terran player, I can certainly attest that we all really enjoy wine a lot. So, yeah, you find that most of the Terran players are very vocal. This is a very interesting way to do it. So basically, he's like, in case he fast probe scouts me, he'll think it's a proxy all in. But his probe shows up right when I take the expand. But I am proxying him. It's a proxy 1-Rax expand, Fear Dragon.
So here's one thing that's worth noting. ShoWTimE, in the last game, he moved up the ramp. He just confirmed that the barracks was there, and then moved back down the ramp. He never goes in, scouts the gas geysers or anything like that. This game, he sees the command center on the low ground. He moves up. He sees that there's no barracks. Theoretically, you should be expecting something like the proxy. And yeah, he moves down to the probe. He knew that something was coming. He was checking for the bunker. He sees it. And this is going to be kind of this really weird, annoying push.
He's pulling probes. The bunker is going to finish. I think this is a really interesting choice. That was a mistake for sure.
Have you seen this very often, Nate? I feel like this is something I haven't seen in a long time.
This is very similar to like something you would try to do builds like this a long time ago. Photon Overcharge kind of killed builds like this, but in Wings of Liberty era, like if you could get probes to stop the proxy, like then yeah, it's great because that bunker might actually kill it because he just needs the SCV to repair, and I wouldn't even hate it if he sent another SCV out there. But yeah, so this is I love that he built another bunker here. That's like the ultimate way to cement this. This is a really awkward game.
This is so weird.
He's gonna counter proxy him, I think. That's the Stargate going down by the gold base now.
But this is so ad-lib. You can kind of feel like ShoWTimE pulling the workers and saying like, I'll try and deal with the bunker, and then pulling back saying, the bunker's finished up, maybe I can't do this. And then going for the proxy. I feel like ShoWTimE is kind of out of his depth right now. And that's never a good feeling, I would say, in these kind of situations.
So this to me is like, uThermal definitely has held this build in his pocket. This is as much of a meme build as I've ever seen. Proxy 1-Rax expand. You actually kill the other guy's base. You know, this reminds me of a game. It was like 4GG versus Grubby on like Ohana or something. And he did a 1-Rax expand, and he saw that Grubby was doing like this really fast Nexus, and he's like, yeah, I'm just gonna have my scouting SCV build a bunker. And he just didn't notice it. He got two Marines in there and just killed the natural, and it was like, how on earth did this happen?
uThermal scouts it out with the SCV. He already had a Cyclone on the way before he scouted this out as well. So he's going to have some sort of immediate answer to the Oracle, but the engineering bay is not really going to be there, so the Oracle can still get some good damage done.
Yeah. This is nice because if you can get the Cyclone over there, because he had to deal with the bunker first, it's hard to get everything else out across the map. Of course, the Cyclone is just going to use its little tickle attack over there. But as long as he can just get rid of that pylon, because he knows the Stalkers are here, he has a small window where he could send his forces over, and if he got that pylon, it would be really, really nice. Marines almost get the Oracle.
Oh man, you were talking about that pylon. I think it's going to be able to... Yeah, he's going to be able to take that out.
He should be able to deny this. This is really, really important. And he saw that there is a probe there. He needs to get rid of that probe. It's scooting by. I think he's going to rehab that pylon. Now this is where it gets difficult.
But the Stalkers are going to come forward. Now they're going to be able to poke away at the Marines. The probe can at least start up another pylon. Maybe 2 pylons. I really like that.
I love that. Land the Viking. Bring the Viking over to help fight against the Stalkers. Plant the Widow Mine next to the Stargate, ideally. Yeah.
Wow.
That's scrappy series we have starting off here. uThermal. That Viking's really nice. A lot of people like, it's one of those things that gets missed because we don't talk about it super often. We don't see it happen a lot. Is that Viking does a lot of damage to Stalkers and probes. And in that situation where he's able to push him back with the Cyclone and bring the Marines and that Viking over to kill the pylon and shut it down after he killed the fast expander of the Protoss, just great. In Control is telling me that he disagrees. He actually thinks that he should have pulled all of his SCVs to kill the pylon. But that's why In Control isn't casting this match, guys, just so you know.
I was really afraid. He started walking around. I was like, is he going to come on the desk?
We had to sit down with the producer, and In Control said he crunched the numbers, but he missed a few. That was part of it. He's gone.
Oh, man. I mean, that is a really, really cool way to kind of throw things out. Again, like, I have not really seen that sort of build. I haven't seen a Terran bunker rushing a Protoss for a really long time.
So uThermal said in the chat, as I'll be doing the chat reporting, he says, I call that one the spicy old Gouda.
Isn't that Gouda?
Only if you're American.
I am American.
Yeah.
You're American.
Well, the joke is about being ignorant of others' cultures, Rabbi. All right.
I'm so ignorant I didn't even realize that there was the joke there that we were ignorant of other people's cultures. Well, we're going to be hopping into game number...
It's the EU broadcast. I'm just catering. I'm just pandering to the audience. That's all. Don't worry. I'll be trying
to get as many of them to type in Twitch chat angrily as possible, right? Increasing engagement.
I'm increasing engagement, exactly. Tomorrow we'll get to the NA group, and I'll just talk about how great America is, you know? Yeah. There you go.
There you go. Well, we're going to move on to Acid Plan for game number 3. The series is tied up 1-1. I think our first series...
This is a really fast 1-1. This is like 2 games that were just like boom, boom.
But I think they've both been kind of interesting games because game 1 we got to see uThermal try to go for the mech, and we saw a lot of the flaws or the problems that arise in going for that kind of style.
I would say more so that he botched his opening is how it feels to me, just because like that what happened there is something that just shouldn't happen. If you play mech and you play Blackpink, then you should have some idea of how to do that. I'm going to put all of that on uThermal's back, just execution-wise, but I would like to see him try that again with better execution at some point in this series as we get into game 3.
All right, Nate. Well, my predictions are that this guy in the top left is going to try and go for that mech style once again. He is representing Team Liquid. It's uThermal.
Yeah, I don't know. Did we see him start stim in the last game?
No.
Do you remember? Okay, yeah. All right. So he could have tried it the last game.
He didn't even get a tech lab, did he?
I don't know. I wasn't looking. I was just asking you. But his opponent in the bottom right, tying things up after dropping that last map. He is ShoWTimE.
Man who is, I would say, not much for the memes as much, of the meme builds.
I would not call ShoWTimE a memer. No, he's a
very stoic guy.
Yeah, and as In Control, Dr. In Control, excuse me, has been pointing out, he has acquired himself a Meisterschaft or 2. He's quite good. He's quite good at the StarCraft. I do not believe that uThermal has ever won a Meisterschaft, so he's got that on him. But I also don't think that ShoWTimE has won an Intel Extreme Masters Shanghai against Neeb in the 110-degree Chinese heat.
Nice cover.
Yeah.
Just making it as specific as possible in case you're like, wait a second, has he? No.
You know, ShoWTimE has never been born in the Netherlands. Like, this just really knocks this matchup off kilter for me.
If you don't have Roddy backing you, how strong can you really be?
Exactly.
Oh.
Unless you're M. Canning. I think he's honorary.
Well, let's be real.
He's honorary Korean at this point.
Yeah, but Roddy also backs M. Canning, so...
That's how you know.
So we got a Reaper opening coming out once again. I'm really interested to see, again, it's going to be whether or not he just goes for that reactor opening next, or with the barracks and then swaps it off to the factory, and then whether he goes to the third command center and if he gets up to Cyclones after. Those are going to be the kind of tells that we'll see if uThermal's going down the same path as game number 1. But in the meanwhile, that Reaper Scout might be able to get a bit more information this game.
Yeah, Reaper Scouts are tricky on this map. There's only one way in and only one way out. So that Adept, it hits you once and you're like, well, okay, I have to run away now because it takes 3 shots to kill it.
Nice bait. He
juke.
Yeah, baits the Adept down to the low ground. Hasn't quite gotten close enough over to the Twilight Council. Hasn't quite seen it yet, so he's going to have to back off before spotting it.
Yeah, that's risky. It's so risky. Playing around with the health regeneration so that he could just survive one more hit from that Adept. Pretty smart play, but already it looks like the fates are going to turn in a little bit of a different direction this game. It's the reactored Marine pumping with the Widow Mine and the Starport. So I'm just going to say that to me this looks like our very, very standard TvP opening that so many players do, where it's just that mine drop. You have Marines at home to deal with some sort of weird counterplay. And maybe he follows up with a tank to deal with the Blink Stalkers. But you're right, Fear Dragon, not seeing that Twilight Council does expose some risk. He's going to go for the Cyclone after the first mine. Interesting. Okay, and he also, the Adept does spawn out that first Widow Mine, which is a really nice scout there for ShoWTimE. Confirming that Widow Mine, he's just going to know, okay, I need to have my units prepared in my mineral lines, be ready for the drops, because you got to know that they're coming. Yeah. And he's building a Viking, too. This is interesting. It makes me feel like he wants to attack just because, like, he's either super paranoid about a Warp Prism / Oracle, or he wants to, like, do some weird push where he uses, like, the Viking behind the Cyclone and his Marines and just does, like, a little bit of, like, a frontal assault, which should totally not work at all versus Blink Stalkers if ShoWTimE got an inkling that this was happening. But ShoWTimE's already kind of prepared for the mech, too. You were just kind of looking at his base. That wall he has set up with the 2 gateways and his Stalker, he's like, yep, this is, I don't know if that's completely drive-by proof, but the second Stalker would be.
Yeah, if you have the second Stalker there, then you can fully, I'm pretty sure you can hold position, fully wall that off against Hellion run-bys or something.
This says to me that he's anticipating a mech build from his opponent. And that's so far what it looks like we've got. Another Cyclone is coming out. There is the medevac now, so maybe he drops the mine or he just attacks the front. He's going to drop 8 Marines. Interesting.
Okay, gonna go across the map and walk in a nice kind of direction with that medevac where he avoids the Adept, is gonna avoid the Observer, which is currently spotting out that Reaper for now.
And Charge is on the way with 2 Forges, so...
yeah, very macro-oriented play coming out right now from ShoWTimE. He doesn't have an absurd number of gateways either, just sitting on those 3, so he can do light bits of aggression here and there. But for the most part, he's going to be looking to try and defend that third, even if it is with just some mild pressure that he's defending.
All of those forces are going to rally out towards that third base. Meanwhile, the medevac makes its way to the main. And this could get a lot done. I mean, a mine with the Cyclone, since...
Stalkers?
Since Charge isn't done yet, the Zealots can only be so effective and really not that amazing. The medevac is able to completely unload while the Cyclones start to press. And this is looking really nice for uThermal. He's already got 10 probe kills and counting.
ShoWTimE is just getting pulled apart from too many different angles, and now all of his units are sitting inside his natural. He's not even mining with any of his probes because he's got a Viking that landed.
In the back.
Are you kidding me?
Oh my god, he got rid of that. There's the shield battery was killed. He's on the mineral line of the third base. And those Marines are still alive in the main.
He's going to kill the Stalkers. There's not going to be anything left there. He's warping in another Stalker. There's no mining. I want to look at that income right now because it's going to be absolutely devastated for ShoWTimE right now.
This is a real oh no moment for ShoWTimE. As these Cyclones are going to finally get picked off. They still get out quite a bit of damage in their last breaths, but holy cannoli.
Oh my god, these 2 Marines. The medevac did finally die, though, so the Marines are not going to be long for this world. Small little bits and pieces of damage as we end up seeing Charge finally complete. Here's the weird thing, though, Nate. uThermal did not have a third base finish behind that. He has one on the way, and he has a siege tank. He has some nice preparation for defensive measures, but the ShoWTimE has a third base. He can replenish a lot of the workers he just lost. He killed off a pretty substantial amount of the army for uThermal.
I wish he would have gotten, or I wish he would have tried to get the probes that were at that third base. Those extra 7 or 8 worker kills would have really done it in, I think, for ShoWTimE. But denying them mining in the main for that long was really nice. However, this right here becomes one of the reasons why a lot of people don't like to play mech. And it is, when you do early damage, it doesn't guarantee you anything. If you get that much damage done with a bio opening, the game is pretty much over, because Stim finishes, and then you've got a bunch of Marines, and you just go kill everything, because the Protoss' tech and everything is so delayed. When you're playing mech, it's like, what are you going to do? Are you going to try to move out with 2 or 3 tanks when, like, 4 Zealot Warbins will just kill your whole army? Like, no. So you have to play a long game now. It does give uThermal a bit of breathing room to take this third, which is the biggest advantage of what he's accomplished. But you can't capitalize on it the same way that you can with bio. You capitalize on it with positioning rather than an opportunity to actually do something about the status of this game. And the Stalkers are still a very much so real threat outside his base.
Yeah, do you think that ShoWTimE has enough information to... I guess he's seen some of the factories coming down, so he should know that this is going to be that full-on mech style, not just the early push in there with a transition to straight-up bio. I was a little bit uncertain.
And he immediately gets a War Prism and starts another robotics facility, which I think is really smart. So he's just setting himself up to have the tools he needs to take this. There's the Twilight Count, or the Temple Archives, excuse me. So against mech, if you fight out in the open versus a tank-based army, really, unless the Terran wants to do some sort of transition, Charge Lot Archon Immortal is amazing.
Oh, yeah. Especially double Robo producing Immortal. You're going to have so many of them.
To lose with Charge Lot Archon Immortal on an appropriate amount of supply against mech requires you to attack into a Terran player who has a defensive setup with like a wall in front of his tanks, some depots, a turret or two, maybe an eBay. If uThermal tries to leave his base with this army and get into just a straight-up scrap against a Protoss army that's maxed on Charge Lot Immortal Archon, I think he's going to get wrecked. So I'm really curious to see how uThermal plays this game out as it goes along, because I don't think you can move out versus this style from the Protoss when you're playing mech.
Well, he's going to add in a couple of these Liberators now, or at least getting out one of them, and we'll see kind of where he ends up using that, if it's going to be just purely on the defensive, or he's going to go try and get some harassment done with it first. But the Hellion run-bys are the one way you can put some form of pressure on. He has tried a couple of these Hellion run-bys, but ShoWTimE is just staying fairly defensive and pulled back with everything but the Stalkers at the front.
Now, this is a weird thing that can happen. A lot of these Stalkers are actually low on health, so the Hellions can just focus them down, power through their shields, which don't have that armor bonus, and actually kill off the Stalkers here. I like this. Yeah. This is a really intelligent decision making, because he's recognizing that, and this is something that not enough Terran players do when you're in this situation, is you can take map control from Stalkers with Hellions, and the reason why is because Protoss players do not want to build Stalkers versus this army. Stalkers are the last thing you want to build versus a Terran player who's massing siege tanks, cyclones, and I mean, the Liberators, yeah, you want Stalkers for those, but losing those Stalkers out in the field, you don't want to build any more than you need to. Yeah. And really, you hope to need none. Okay, looks like ShoWTimE starting to move forward. He's glancing at opportunities if he can try and pounce on this army before he gets fully sieged up. But this is almost like a TVZ right now, Nate. This positioning is the positioning that we see every Terran player abuse versus Zerg players, but he's going to try and abuse it versus a Protoss. He scans and knows that this army is looking to try and flank him. He has all those siege tanks set up. He needs to try and bait this out so he can engage versus one side of the army at a time. Yeah, I would have really liked to see him siege one of these Liberators on his left flank just to be safe. Also, he should be minding the storms, as there's some amazing storm opportunities now created thanks to these tanks being so clumped. There are quite a few High Templar, so he's feeling a little bit concerned. But if he can encroach close enough to get his siege tanks in range of that Nexus and just start shelling it, and he can force ShoWTimE to do something, I think that'll be really huge. Extra starports, fusion core, baby. All right, I'm in love. All right, ShoWTimE taking a pause and saying, you know what? Let's take a moment. Let's take a moment to think about this situation. Do I want to engage here or not? Yeah, a bit of a crazy moment right there, as I think ShoWTimE is ready to pounce. He's got that Nexus. It's depleting on hit points. In a moment's time, he's going to end up losing it. So he has to go now, yeah. I feel like. He only has a couple seconds. You know, just the status that the game is in right now, like, you absolutely cannot lose your fourth base versus a Terran player who is going up to 5 on mech, which is one of the few ways that you can make it work. And yeah, okay, looks like the players are ready to go. Yeah, they're just
we're just waiting for the referee to unpause the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is going to be a really, really important engagement here for both of these players. Are there no refs? Okay, there's the ref.
There we
go.
We Gucci.
Cool. All right, we're hopping back into
It's
it.
all good.
Nexus is falling really, really rapidly in hit points. If we can get that up on the screen ASAP. The Nexus did end up falling.
Yep, the Nexus has been taken down. And the Army's just kind of poking into what's out here. ShoWTimE's just kind of holding his ground on this base.
Okay, there you guys can see the Nexus did fall, and it looks like ShoWTimE also lost a few units. He didn't end up going in with his army, so I guess he's just going to sacrifice it and take the bottom left-hand base instead. All right, here we go. Pouncing in from both sides. There's the anti-army missile. Tanks on the left-hand side going after the arm on the left. It gets obliterated, but the Zealots coming in from a Warp Prism on the north side. That's really, really nice, and it takes care of a lot of the units for uThermal, but does it take care of enough?
I think this is. I think this is a mission accomplished scenario so far. The transition into the Liberators and the Cyclones is a twofold reasoning. A, the Cyclones can help if there's an air switch coming from ShoWTimE. But B, the Liberators are also what's going to be the nail in the coffin for this, because now that he has to rebuild that ground army, ShoWTimE can't make an air transition. And since he got the Fusion Core, uThermal has the option to go into Liberator range. And ranged Liberators, regardless of whether you're playing mech or bio, are the most frustrating units for Protoss to deal with. I started playing Protoss recently, so I can't confirm. There's nothing I hate more than that. Maybe the mine drops, but ranged Liberators are insane and so hard to deal with. And when this Protoss player has to double chrono out Immortals, well, you're not getting a whole lot of anti-air.
And he loses yet another one of those attempts at that other base. That fourth base gets shut down. He's trying to retake his old fourth base location, but it's so far away from completing. Hellions are going to get taken care of pretty quickly here, but the majority of the main army for uThermal remains alive and siege up in still a very offensive position.
Yep, and I love it. They use the Liberators. The Liberators can also just cover a flank too, really, because flanking is so important for killing a mech army. All that really matters is that you can funnel the Protoss into one pathway of attack. That's where you're going to get the most utility out of your forces. So long-range mining probes over there, not what you want to have. Cyclone is poking now. But the Observer sees the army, and he's scared. He's scared to move up on that. This refinery, or excuse me, the simulator is going to get knocked down. I think there's the counterattack we can see kind of swooping in. He's getting ready to flank the Terran army.
Yeah, he's trying to come in from 3 different sides. Comes in with the Zealots on the north. On the right-hand side, all of the Immortals. Doesn't quite join in with the last bit of the flank and ends up losing all of the Stalkers. Now the Liberators are just tearing through the Immortals.
Yep, and this is just perfectly executed by uThermal. GG. He's going to go up 2-1. Making it happen versus Protoss. This is how I like to see Terran mech versus Protoss. This army composition is actually really good. It does work. Let's not forget that he did a great job of slowing down the game earlier on. And despite the argument that can be made that there were 3 bases left for the Protoss, in the current metagame, one of the reasons why Terran players are complaining a lot is that usually by the time you get your natural, like, close to being saturated, the Protoss has usually got their third half saturated. So in this scenario, he had a fully saturated natural, and his third was halfway done, while ShoWTimE had to rebuild workers for all of his bases and really slowed down his tech ability. And that allowed him to get that third at a time where he wasn't worried about being harassed. And that really set up uThermal to make that next jump so that he could keep getting his tanks and his upgrades and get Blue Flame and enough Hellions to get map control back. Like, this was just a very smooth, well thought out strategy. And I think it's very important to note for all the people out there that don't like mech builds or think that they're not viable in situations such as this, that what makes these builds work is the same thing that makes almost any build work versus Protoss in the current meta, which is you do some early harass. You can still, it can be a mine drop, it can be a cyclone push, it can be a marine drop with a cyclone push behind it. But uThermal just takes a very tactical approach to trying to get himself an early advantage that allows him to do the build that he wants without any trouble. And we see pretty much just steamrolled ShoWTimE.
Well, we've had one game where uThermal attempts the mech, ends up failing. Another game where he goes for the proxy barracks and ends up winning. And a second game, or I should say a third game, where he ends up going for that mech and makes it work. We'll find out what happens in game number 4 in just a little bit, guys. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the WCS European Challenger Finals. We are still getting ready to hop into that next game, but first, my name is Fear Dragon. I'm still here with Nathanius, and we want to take a look at that bracket while we wait for the next game to get set up.
Yeah, you know, I just can't get my eyes off that bracket, really. I mean, I've seen a lot of brackets in my
It's a pretty good-looking bracket.
But it's such a good-looking bracket, and really, I mean, I'd swipe right on that.
I appreciate all of that bracket.
Actually, I'd swipe
every
up
part
on
of
that.
it.
Yeah, I'd super like this bracket, and that Cyril Hero Marine match is going to be either the fastest stomp to accelerate our schedule ever, or it's going to be like the greatest match of the entire bracket, because Cyril is such an overwhelming favorite for this. But Hero Marine played some really good games earlier. He showed a lot of variety in his build, showed a lot of range, and it makes me feel good. Because when I see Terran players play well, it makes me feel well. And when I see Mech win, it, you know, makes my heart spin.
Nate, I want to believe you, and I want to feel for you on that, because I also really want Hero Marine to succeed. But I feel like Hero Marine inherited the Bomber curse, where anytime he finds success and he's meeting expectations or something, it's to build in for a greater disappointment. He's the guy that everyone is just like, man, this guy is so good. He can go so far, and he keeps building it up, building it up, building up the hype. And then eventually it kind of just comes crashing down. So I'm like, I'm really hoping he's going to be able to give us an amazing series versus Cyril. I'm really, really hoping for it.
Yeah, that's a general, that's a trend that a lot of non-Korean players that we hype up get into. But I do think that, I mean, he's still really young. At any point, Hero Marine I think he can still reach that next level, you know?
He's one of those players that we always say, like, he's really young. And it's like, yeah, he's really young. He's been really young for like 6-7 years. So it's like,
yeah.
Yeah,
to be fair, some of those guys,
really
in a relative sense, you could say the same thing about, like, Maru or Raynor, but that's because 6-7 years ago, they were like 12 playing the game. Or maybe, no, actually 6 years ago, Raynor was probably 10.
6 years ago, Raynor was actually 9, because he's not even 16 yet.
Yeah, so like I said.
Soon.
Yeah. Well, when he's 18, we'll still call him a young player, because in StarCraft, we got plenty of people pushing 30 here, all right? They you know, they still lit Toddcast.
Oh, man. Well, we're going to be starting up here in the top left-hand corner of the map. Top of the red Protoss player from Team Arma. It is ShoWTimE.
I love you, Todd. Please don't block me on Twitter. In the bottom right, we have the blue Terran player. He is uThermal.
Todd would never do that to you.
What do you know?
What do you know?
What do you know? We'll have to bring in we'll have to bring in Doctor in Control to answer that question later.
Oh.
But Backwater is, if you like Mechios, then this is like the bowl is already poured when you take it out of the cabinet. You know, it's like it's like some Doctor Strange voodoo magic where you're like, I don't know why, but it's not even like it hasn't been left out. It just appeared when you took it out. You're like, it's already good to go. All right,
I didn't get to finish my breakfast, please.
This is your instant Mechios map, because you got your 3 bases. The 4th is right outside. You just take your giant army and you move from your natural right outside to the 4th, and there you go. You've got 4 bases, so you can do whatever you want. And it really just comes down to, if you want to play mech on this map, all you have to do is put yourself in a position to not die to some really early attack from the Protoss or something like Warp Prism play, etc., etc. So if he goes for it, I think it'll make for an interesting game. I didn't expect this, because I've been on the road too much to keep up with everything that's been going on. And let's be frank, I'm usually not awake at 8 in the morning, let alone 3 a.m. like we were for this one. So I haven't been able to see too much of the European games, but this is really refreshing. I like seeing this out of uThermal. I think these are the types of builds that I'm like, I wish I could make this good. And I know that I'm not good enough to make these builds good. But watching uThermal do it, I'm like, yes, this is kind of what I wanted. This is what I want out of a mech build versus Protoss. You know, you get a couple of those early units to defend, but you use them in an aggressive way when the opportunity arises. And then you remind people that tank Hellbat is actually really strong ever since the tank buff 2 years ago.
Indeed. Well, we do have a proxy factory coming down that I feel like we have to mention from uThermal up here on the top right. I wonder, you know, sometimes you end up seeing the Terran players that go straight into the starport also proxied with this, and you do something like elevator up some Hellions. I mean, what are you thinking with this?
I mean, proxy mine drop makes a lot of sense. Cyclone is also okay in this situation. I will follow up with saying that it's not so great versus the Stargate the moment it gets scouted, because I think the idea here is that you want to do some drop play. But actually, you know, he could kill that cybernetics core. He won't have any. If he had vision, he could try to use it to kill the cyber core before warp gate was done. But
that's an idea.
The Oracle, if the Cyclone reveals itself immediately, the Oracle can kill it. If the Medevac and the second Cyclone come over, Warp Gate will finish, probably. But he can kill the Cyber Core, which would be a really nice grab. Because A, it delays tech, B, it costs money, and C, it keeps him from warping in Stalkers or anything like that, even if he gets his Warp Gate.
Yeah, surprisingly enough, you have to also remember that the Cybernetics Core also delays other forms of tech. You need a Cybernetics Core to throw down, say, something like a Twilight Council or a Robo. So if he doesn't do that in time, that could become a little bit of a problem. But for now, the Oracle moving forward sees, wait a second, where are all of your buildings? This is you're missing things. Do you have a fast third base? He's going to go around, check, and be like, no, okay, I know what's happening now.
Well, he should know now as the drop hits his main base. He's going to shut it down. Cannot build. That Phoenix cannot build. Wait, he actually can't build anything.
There's only one gateway. There's only one gateway right now.
He can't build nothing right now, man. He's going to pull the probes over, and he can just lift up because nothing here shoots up either. He's like, all right, I'm going to drop them like they're hot.
He's not even remaking more of these pylons right now. He's not, okay, now he's starting to throw some of them down, but the Adepts are starting to go down. Oracles are out of energy. uThermal has done a significant amount of damage with this light little bit of aggression.
And guess what? Here's round 2, baby. Guess who's back? The Cyclones return. And at this natural expansion, the Viking also pushes those Oracles away. Hell, man, there's the Chrono Boost to finish off Warp Gate. Now he's going to be able to get 3 Stalkers in, I guess is what he's going to go for.
Or is he, Nate? But or is he?
Yeah, damn. Okay, just 2. And I think that Viking, I guess the Viking in the air is fine. He can land that and help contribute in this fight against it as well. Doing a great job pulling the units back with the Cyclones. And uThermal has, man, these have been some really creative, interesting builds out of our Terran player that this is so refreshing to see. I love it. GG, uThermal's going forward.
Holy
and I am excited. I am hyped up because that was the least boring Terran vs. Protoss series that I've seen in a long time. Almost every TvP these days is like, I must desperately kill the Protoss before they get 3 bases saturated and kill my bio army with Colossi and Storm.
Why not just kill them before they get Warp Gate?
Yeah, that's...
And if you can't do that in time, then just stop Warp Gate so that you have more time before Warp Gate finishes.
Yeah, this was a really fun series to watch. As a Terran player, we got to see uThermal, a player who's at the top of the European scene, go up against ShoWTimE, a player who's like a bit here and there. And I don't really know ShoWTimE's condition perfectly right now, but I think that if you're a Terran player watching this, yeah. I'm not wrong, okay? These builds are fun to do. It's not bad to open with Cyclones and meme around with mech against Protoss. It can work. It's very difficult. You need a lot of practice, but when it looks really fun. I feel like this.
A lot of metagaming comes into this one though, because you think, okay, first of all, Backwater. We spent the first 2 or 3 minutes of that game talking about how this is the ideal map for a lot of mech, the ideal map for playing that long standard game. We talked about getting the 4th base really easily and all that stuff. And then you have ShoWTimE, who also just didn't really scout. He's not being the most adamant scouter. He moves in, he confirms a command center, he confirms a barracks at the top of the ramp, and he's like, go, cool, I'm done, I'm going home, and I'm gonna go chase after the Reaper. So ShoWTimE really just never gets any actual vision of things until the Oracles finally move in, and when the Oracle moved in, the Cyclones are getting dropped in the main base, so the Oracle's out of position at that point.
The timing was perfect, and it wouldn't have worked without the proxy. He had to be there that fast to get that Warp Gate denial, and really, I think ShoWTimE, as soon as he realized that not only was Warp Gate stopped, but the Stargate wasn't producing anymore, I think at that point you're just like, you're saying things we can't say on WCS broadcast. You're hitting your desk angrily with your fist. And, well, you're typing GG.
Indeed, but that now does mean that uThermal, our meching Terran player, is sitting up 2-1 and 1 game away from moving on to that semifinals to be our last player to make it there and to face off versus his semifinal opponent. Wait a second. Wait, it's 3-1? Oh my god, he was up 2-1. Holy cow, guys. I'm like so floored.
Oh, you did.
I'm so floored because that bunker rush game just completely evaporated from my mind because it was so fast. And now that last game is so fast. Oh my god, guys. I'm sorry.
Okay. It's okay, Fear Dragon. I thought you just really wanted to keep talking about the match. I was like, oh, we could do it.
I was like, man, this is such a crazy series. Wow. I'm kind of floored right now, Nate. Take it away. Jeez, holy cow.
So let's take a look at what we've got coming up. There's a good few more matches. We've got Cyril going up against Hero Marine. That's the first semifinal. Then it's going to be uThermal again against Petit Drogo. And then the finals. And then that's it. We got 3 more matches coming at you today. A TVZ, a TVP. So it's something for everybody. We got Zerg, Terran, and Protoss. And now that there's 2 Terrans, because it's impossible to have an even split when there's 4 slots and 3 races, you guys in the chat can all just start complaining about how overpowered Terran is and how we don't need the Marauder buff. Just go for it.
There you go. I mean, there are 4 players that play in the semifinals, and there has to be 2 of at least 1 race.
So that race is overpowered.
But therefore,
100%.
that race is overpowered. Man, really, really well done. And it's going to be an exciting semifinals. We're going to be back, I think, in a little bit with more of that StarCraft action. So, guys, don't go anywhere as we get started with that first semifinals match in just a little bit.